This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 11th of September 2020, and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, the General in Uhuru Cabinet. In the Standard, leave my mother alone.
Wow.
And in the Star, Jubilee plans to split RUTO's role into 4. Firstly, just a reminder, today is 9/11, so we're thinking of all the victims from across the world who lost their lives. You're never forgotten and you're in our hearts. Let us begin. Who's the general?
Who is this new general in Uhuru's cabinet? So I think it was as of yesterday, the news came out that pursuant to Executive Order number 3 of 2020, General Badi will now attend cabinet meetings. So he then becomes the first serving soldier to take part in the sessions. And I think this is just an extension of his new NMS role, kind of finding a way to legitimize it within the executive, cabinet.
Yeah.
And so I think what was interesting is the fact that his own boss, Chief of Defense Forces, Robert Kiboshi, will not be sitting in those meetings. I think it was quite strange that his subordinate has somehow skipped him and entered a different level of
An
government.
elevated position.
Exactly.
I didn't even know we had oath of secrecy.
But I suppose that's important,
absolutely,
because cabinet it's not an elected position, it's appointed, so there's probably a lot of state secrets that operate
I'm
in those
always
meetings.
in awe of our institution. It sometimes shocks me. My worry is Kenya becoming a military dictatorship? What's happening?
No.
Is this the next junta?
I don't think it should be a worry. I think it should be a celebration.
Yeah.
See, some of the political baggage Uhuru Kenyatta has carried underneath him includes governors and probably deputies and that kind of thing, have let him down. And that's because they are more interested in their political ambitions than in the work that he's interested in. Or maybe even the work that Kenyans are interested in. If you see what the Nairobi Metropolitan Services has achieved in just 100 days under this man's leadership, this man called Badi, it is something the Nairobi County government may not have achieved even in the last 8 years.
So in many countries, you call in the military to sort of fix a disaster, to come and put in their measures and whatnot. Nairobi was a disaster after Sonko, we can all agree, but just come in.
Absolutely.
Now we have the Kenya Meat Commission, and now we have somebody from the military sort of heading it, and it was in a disastrous position. But I think, I feel like we shouldn't shift directly to military just for that. I think we need to still preserve the fact that there are people who are able to do this, that they don't have to become from the military.
Let me tell you, GK, in 2018, President Uhuru Kenyatta at KICC was launching geospatial maps done by a joint committee of some military fellows. Now, there is a single map done by the private sector would have costed Kenya 148 million shillings. When the military came together, young guys came together and did that one single map, it cost them 70,000 shillings.
So it's more efficient.
Yeah, it's about efficiency.
More efficient.
I believe,
they
100%.
get their stuff done on time. They follow orders. They have no political ambitions.
Yes,
What else do you want?
And I guess it also fosters loyalty within the armed forces, right?
Absolutely.
You know that if you leave military or your job, you have somewhere in civil service to come
you
and
can go.
go to. Well, we have a 3-part criteria that we're going to use to break down the headlines. We'll ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yes.
It sounds very good. It was very topical. It just happened.
I like the headline, short and sweet.
Let's park it.
Okay, in the Standard.
The Standard.
Someone is saying, leave my mother alone.
Yes, and that is Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
That some miscreants from Rift Valley decided to insult his mother. And Uhuru Kenyatta, in a very mild response to them, told them that you silly people, please focus on your own mothers and
leave my mother alone.
Leave my mother alone. But you know what?
But was it not just mchongano?
No.
Mama jokes.
Mothers, no goes on. Absolute no goes on.
Well,
and especially if it is the president's mother.
Okay.
And by the way, I will not be shocked if anything happens to these fellows.
Well, I mean, insulting somebody's mother is not illegal per se.
Well,
but it's so low. I mean, when you make a your mama joke, it means that you've reached the end of your logical statements.
The end, right?
That you have nothing left to say, that you're like, you know what, your mother.
I read this somewhere. They said that everyone has a mother, right? And she signifies a source of sacredness, of, love. And, it's this thing that you don't want touched. And so insulting your mom at face value is is worse than insulting yourself. So you'd rather that he insulted Uhuru Kenyatta himself personally, and left his mother out of it. Worse yet, they're not of the same social hierarchy. This is the president of the nation.
Yes,
but however, I think this is also kind of displayed to us that DP's camp is beginning to get out of hand. I think he's lost the leash that he's given them is kind of, it's extended itself. He was obviously embarrassed thereafter.
Which is why he tweeted and said,
he had to almost retract their statements. And I think this is the problem of having, dogs that can't control themselves with a ringleader.
Tujay, that is exactly where I was going.
Tell me.
You see, these guys did not want to make Uhuru. I mean, they were not angry themselves. These guys who insulted the people's mothers. It was part of a script, all right? And the script was to provoke GEMA and to provoke Uhuru Kenyatta into making one thing. But I'll not focus so much on that. The idea here is, I was thinking to myself, why is GEMA so much? There are elements of GEMA that are so, they're protecting these fellows that are insulting Uhuru Kenyatta. And I have a story for you guys. You see, there's a place somewhere in America where this suspect accused of murder, on the night before his hearing, he finds some peanut butter. So he takes this peanut butter, scoops part of it, and applies it on his backside. Right? Now, on the day of the hearing, the judge says, hey, suspect X is appearing, and as the charges are being read, this guy takes his fingers and he slices up his backside and he licks his fingers clean. Mwah! Licks it completely. Now, bailiffs won't touch him, right? Because they think he has swallowed some poop. Now, before the judge can realize, he signs some papers. He says this guy is mad and therefore has to go to a psychiatry facility evaluation. All right, and therefore he might be mad and cannot face
the murder charges, on the basis of insanity.
Absolutely. Now the guy, he escapes his murder charge and he goes to a mental facility. Now, who is the judge in this case? The judge is GEMA, but who's the guy who swallowed the peanut butter? It is RUTO. You see, GEMA has believed that RUTO is a messiah. Is a messiah. What do you want to call it again? The myth of?
Well, yeah, the myth of this man.
The myth of this man, and all that has taken GEMA to swallow his Kool-Aid is just peanut butter.
So we're being lied to, and we don't even realize.
They are being lied to, not we.
Anyway, what I got out of the Standard was that the president came out and said, listen, I want to focus on development and the betterment of this country, and some people want to misdirect and signal fear and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Great headline, though. I really liked it.
Yes. So in the Star, Jubilee plans to split RUTO's role into 4.
Yes.
And this is to do with Jubilee Party itself. And so they're saying they will create 4 deputy leaders, party leader positions within the party, which means it would dilute DP's influence and box him out of the succession matrix. And so it would mean that RUTO would just remain the party leader for North Rift. There would be another one for South Rift and etc.
Yeah. He's
very uninspired.
He's being cut down to size. If
he's being cut down to size, and they're basically saying with these 4 centers of power, then RUTO's path to nomination within the party will sort of be harder. My question is, what makes them think that RUTO is relying on Jubilee as a party itself? I feel like maybe closer to the time he will abandon ship, and he has already created a special purpose vehicle for his 2022 ambitions.
It doesn't matter. Look, if,
numbers don't lie.
I mean, if we were to go with the crowds that went to Kisii to see him yesterday first, there's also another analogy. You see, if you
You're full
take
of stories today.
there's a goat and the hyena in the market analogy. If you take hyena to the market, the fellows will just come there and look at it, right? But at the end of the day, they'll go home with the goat. You see, what William Ruto, I think, forgets is is the thing that gives him his power right now is his deputy presidency. If that is taken away from him, he will just become an ordinary raya.
Yeah.
And that is about to happen. I don't think the president will take this kind of rebellion. You know, just looking at him, and this guy is coming with all manner of crowd saying, I can beat system. This guy will be impeached within no time.
Anyway, well, I don't know about impeachment, but I do know that a party he doesn't have to rely on Jubilee Party. That's all I'm saying.
There are other vehicles to
that
take
he has
him.
probably seen this from 18. He sees that he is probably going to be boxed out, and he has made a plan B.
My point to
as
you,
any good politician does.
What do we think about the headline?
If he goes to any other party, he'll cease being deputy president.
Anyway, I suspect
You'll suspect he'll do what?
Anyway, guys, I think the point 2M is making is that there's power in incumbency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And he needs to maintain that. What do we think about the headline?
I think
that we should toss this headline, and I think we should give the winning headline to the Standard. I think the Standard has been on a roll this week with great headlines.
Thank you, Tuja.
Anytime.
I was defeated there for a second. I didn't know what else to say. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
Do we have something in the Standard
Yes,
today?
Ndula has drawn 2 donkeys that are joined at the hip, and that those 2 donkeys are labeled Third Way Alliance. And I think, is that Ukuru Kot? And
with the mouth of a donkey.
The mouth of a donkey, and the donkey is wearing glasses. And the caption there is, I'm here to stay. I don't think we're in a position to discuss Ukuru Kot, are we?
Yeah, but it's interesting because for a man who was supposed to be the sort of Zion of like virtue and values, he's now been kicked out for financial impropriety.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we should
throw it away.
I think it's a throwaway cartoon.
Yes.
In the Standard, what do we have?
You have Gado, and it's a drawing of who is this? Reading women protection laws on that.
Does it look like Matiangi?
It does. I don't. No, Matiangi doesn't look like that. and that's on paper. In reality, is showing someone who's fending off a lady and
who is pregnant.
Pregnant. And what's the caption there?
And COVID has not helped matters.
Yeah, I think that we should throw that away.
I think a relevant cartoon, I think, in regards to how difficult it is for anybody to get a job in this climate, let alone a pregnant woman.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure what the context was, so
yeah, that one goes very far.
Yeah.
Third one is Ozone and the caricature of Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, Tobiko, Atuoli, Murathe, Sudi. This is Moses Kuria and Ruto, and they're in a band and they're saying reggae is back. However, it's actually that's not even it's not Kuria. It is Ngeno and Sudi and Ruto that are beating the drums of war.
However, everybody is playing along in the band, which means somebody or everybody is.
However, Ozone is pointing out who are those 3 people banging on
the drums of war. Yeah, it is simple. It is Ruto, this fellow called Sudi, and that Joan Ngeno.
Because in the grand scheme, reggae is back. People are back to the streets with their large crowds. But
who do we give our winning cartoon?
There's only one left.
Ozone.
Not particularly inspiring, but we can give it to.
It's quite funny. I think we give it to Ozone.
And now for our final thought, but before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled The Road to Character by David Brooks.
Nice. Before we get there, may I give a summary of the week?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So this week we looked at some controversial leaders, good or bad, and we said what kind of lessons can we derive from them by looking at their reigns. So on Monday, we looked at Mary Tudor, The First Queen by Linda Porter, and here we explored the origins of the term Bloody Mary. We saw how many Protestants died under her reign as she tried to restore the Catholic Church in England. And this was a sympathetic portrayal of the leader. Bastardized by her father, Henry VIII, she increasingly became resentful that her right to the throne had been taken away. She went on to organize a coup against her brother with the support of Country, and she became the first queen to rule out of her own right. She did not become queen through marriage or being born. She became queen because she deserved that position. She skillfully instrumentalized religion to work to her advantage. On Tuesday, we looked at The Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun by Wes Roberts, and here we saw how the 5th century king of the Hunnic Empire was known as the terror of God, and he was so barbaric and so feared that the Roman Empire would pay him gold to keep the peace. But there's lots to learn from Attila. things that he did 2,000 years ago are still applicable to leadership today. 3 main principles we learned: the essentials of decisiveness, only making decisions when you understand an issue. And in decision making, courage is guided by prudence. The art of delegation was the last one, giving authority to those you hand over assignments to. We also saw the importance of lessons learned. Many hands were lost in battles in which Attila simply had not prepared them to fight. Leaders are charged with the responsibility of never making the same mistake twice, incorporating mechanisms for improving and equipping their teams for future battle. On Wednesday, we looked at King Leopold's Ghost, a story of greed, terror, and heroism in colonial Africa by Adam Hochschild. And here we saw how Leopold used lies, deception, and bribery to acquire the vast Congo region, which became his own private colony. The Congo was the only colony in Africa that was a private property of an individual and not a state. And the greedy king used armed militia to coerce the Congolese for his favor. He gathered ivory and rubber, becoming very wealthy, and to the rest of the world, Leopold portrayed himself as a humanitarian, but to those in Congo, they saw a totally different animal.
Yeah.
On Thursday, we looked at Power and Political Culture in Suharto's Indonesia by Stefan Eckloff. And Suharto had led Indonesia for 31 years. His framework for leadership was dubbed the New Order. And we saw how he was the darling of the West before the end of the Cold War. But we also learned how he was able to govern and consolidate a large country, 14th largest in the world, with a population of 200 million and with over 700 languages. And he did this through his strong military-based government. And how, interestingly, corruption thrived, but so did the country. And today we bring it all together and look at how to cultivate positive virtues that build character for leadership.
Exactly. So this book addresses one of the main issues with the modern culture that the author sees today, that we are too achievement-oriented. So he uses a selection of autobiographical examples, and he criticizes our obsession with what he calls the big self, and instead tries to emphasize the merits of developing character. And so the book begins by making a distinction between the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. So he says resume virtues are the ones that you would list on your resume, the skills that you bring to the job market and what you may contribute to get external success. And he translates that against the eulogy virtues, which he says are deeper. These are the virtues that get talked about at your funeral, i.e. the eulogy, the ones that exist at the core of your being, whether you are kind, are you brave, are you honest or faithful, and what kind of relationships you formed over the course of your life. And so he says in the book that this thought was triggered by another book called The Lonely Man of Faith by Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So the rabbi noted that there are 2 accounts of creation in Genesis from the Bible. And he argued that these 2 represent the opposing sides of our nature, and he called them Adam 1 and Adam 2.
Yeah.
So modernizing these categories, Brooks says that Adam 1 is the external, career-driven, ambitious side of our nature, the resume self. But then the subject of this book focuses on Adam 2, the internal, humble eulogy self. And so he then takes this book and, picks out some people from history. And so each chapter looks at a different character who was not perfect. And the difference, as Brooks puts it, he says that these people were acutely aware of their own weaknesses. Yeah. They had to go down. They had to descend into the valley of humility to climb to the heights of character. And so he argues that these hardships and challenges actually offer more opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
So just very quickly, chapter 1 looks at what Brooks calls the little me and the big me. So he gives, for example, after the World War II, the US really made this concerted effort to promote modesty in light of a huge victory after the war. But this was a part of the culture at the time. It was a time when people intuitively resisted the natural human tendency towards self-love and self-praise. And so he gives an example of the administrations of some various US presidents. So he says, for example, in Dwight Eisenhower's administration, of the 23 men and women who served in his cabinet, only one of them wrote a memoir. And even then that memoir was so boring and so to the point that it wasn't exactly a hit. 28 years later, by the time Reagan is president, 12 of his 30 cabinet members published memoirs, and almost all of them were self-serving and self-advertising. Look what I did, look what I achieved. But he says he started to notice this shift, the author, that this culture of humility change to this culture of the big me. So he says, for example, in 1915, the Gallup organization asked high school students if they considered themselves to be important. Just asking the question, are you important? At that point, only 12% said yes. By 2005, this time it wasn't 12%. 80% said that they considered themselves to be important. And so Brooks wrote this book knowing that he may not be able to achieve all those virtues of Adam too, but he was showing examples of people who accepted their failure, accepted their weaknesses, and found a way to turn them into a path towards a better, more stronger character. And I think that it's an important lesson to learn.
Absolutely. You know, Tujay, I was not born around World War II, but I think so? Yes. But I sort of agree with this thesis, all right? The shift in culture between little me and big me. And I want to reiterate something Prof always tells us, that we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. But before I say why, allow me to read the following story. And something in chapter 1 that he says. He says, it begins by him walking a dualism. No, sorry. I arrived home before the program was over and listened to that radio show in my driveway for a time. Then I went inside and turned on a football game. A quarterback threw a short pass to a wide receiver who was tackled almost immediately for a 2-yard gain. The defensive player did what a professional athlete do these days in moments of personal accomplishment. He did a self-puffing victory dance as the camera lingered. It occurred to me that I just watched more self-celebration after a 2-yard gain than I had had after the United States won World War II. The contrast set off a chain of thoughts in my mind. It occurred to me that this shift might symbolize a shift in culture, a shift from a culture of self-effacement that says, nobody's better than me, but I'm no better than anyone else, to a culture of self-promotion that says, recognize my accomplishments, I'm pretty special. That contrast, while nothing much in itself, was like a doorway into the different ways it is possible to live in this world. Now, when I read this, I asked myself this question: do you think, guys, that the digital age has made us selfish? I mean, look, every single phone that we have has a camera right in the front. All right, that's for us to take selfies. All right, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have name it. All that stuff is for us to take videos of ourselves and let the world know what we are doing at whatever place and that kind of thing. Maybe the digital age has made us more selfish, that we think more of ourselves and we want others to listen and to see what we are doing at every moment in time. And maybe that is what probably has led to more suicides. And I'd like to sort of ask you out there, let's probably do some research. You go to World War II times and see how many people kill themselves and compare that to now. The rate, I am sure, is much higher right now, much higher today than it's ever been.
Oh, fantastic. I really like this book. This is probably one of my favorite books in 2020 so far, right? And I think everyone should pick it up. But I think what Brooks is inviting us to do is to be present, to summon ourselves beyond our individual selfish needs, and ask yourself, so you often ask yourself, what is the purpose of your life? But I think he also leads us to say, what does the world need you to do? And he says, ask yourself a different set of questions. What does life want from me? What are my circumstances calling me to do? And he says, in this scheme of things, we don't create our lives, we are summoned by life. The important answers are not found inside, they're actually found outside. And so he says, the world existed before you did, and it will continue to exist long after you do, right? And so if you look at what God is asking you to do, he's put you in a specific place, in a specific role, and he's really asking you to say, at what points do my talents meet the needs of the world? And how do I progress the world that you live in? So it was very powerful for me. Look out for your call for actions, because they're surrounded in the context in which you live in. And it's a chance to justify the God-given talents and gifts that you've been given, right? So on a day where we had winning headline from the Standard and a winning cartoon from the Star, I want to leave you with this. There's a poem in the book that he puts. It says, take a bucket, fill it with water, put your hand in it, and put it up to your wrist, and now pull it out. The hole that remains is a measure of how much you'll be missed. The moral of this quaint example is to just do the best that you can. Be proud of yourself. But remember, there is no indispensable man, and nothing you can do can ever be accomplished on your own.
Yeah.
So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Hang Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a lovely weekend.